we'll start that. Well, yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Tamamta informational session. We're so excited about this project. I hope you'll get some of that enthusiasm today. We're just so excited to be introducing this and launching us. I'm Courtney Carruthers. I'm a professor of fisheries at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, based in Anchorage, the homelands of the Dena'ina peoples. And I want to start by acknowledging their long-term and ongoing stewardship of these lands and relations. And I want to recognize my commitment, especially as a European descended settler here, to learning and practicing how to live in better relationship with the peoples of this place and the lands and the beings here. As our team introduces ourselves, we'll do that first. I encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know whose traditional lands you reside upon and work upon. There's a really nice app that I'll post here in the chat. If you don't know, you can have a look. There you go. So yes, I'm the PI of this project, and we have a really incredible team that'll introduce themselves here in a minute. This work really grew out of years of relationship building and some deep work, some deep relationships, deep conversations, and some research. Dr. Jessica Black and I and others have been involved in research that really studies the deeply entrenched inequities that persist in Alaska, the striking absence of Indigenous people, values, practices, knowledge systems, governance systems from our educational research and management systems in Alaska. And we want to radically transform these systems. And we're starting with this project in training the next generation of scientists and managers through this graduate program. Briefly about myself, I'm an environmental anthropologist. I've been studying fishery systems in Alaska and the Pacific for about 20 years, mostly the social and cultural dimensions of fishery systems. I've seen dominant environmental and economic sciences completely erase away Indigenous peoples, their value systems, their relationships, their stewardship practices, the relation and care-based ways of life, policies that dispossess the first stewards from their resources, the institutionalized racism that continues to criminalize traditional ways of life. So my research is really focused on trying to bring some of this to light and focus on the relationships between people and communities that they have with their fish and other beings. But it's really hard in the fisheries sciences to have space to talk about some of these basic equity issues, access issues. So that my work has really been focused on that equity and access and well-being for people, peace moving forward. I have an enormous debt of gratitude for the Sugpiaq peoples of the Kodiak Archipelago, where I first came to in Alaska, for really teaching me how to live in a good way and directing me toward the study of limited entry and individual transferable quotas as hugely fundamental policies that have dispossessed Indigenous people in Alaska from some of their rights to fish. I want to thank Sugpiaq elders as well for blessing us with this title, Tamamta. It means we or all of us, and they had blessed that for another related project, and we adopted it for this project. And I want to thank Elizabeth Mick Lindley, for recording a Yupik pronunciation of our title. We'll post that to our website. Tamamta, and so we'll have that. And I want to thank Mick as well. She's a Yupik graduate student at UAF who's agreed to really be the face of our project with a beautiful image that you might have seen on our website. And we really want to thank you, Mick, for already helping to shape this work in really important ways. And we wanted to also acknowledge Abayuk Moore is a Yupik artist who's been working on some creative marks for our project. And we're so excited to have her brilliance on helping us represent this project artistically. So that's a little from me. I want to pass off to our team. Dr. Black, maybe you'd like to go next and we can pass off from there.
Yes, Drin Gwinzi, good afternoon, everyone. Shojri, Jessica Oji, Gwachaje, Gwatsan Ihli, Gat Tanangwichi. Good afternoon, my name is Jessica Black. My family's from Fort Yukon, and I live and reside in Fairbanks on the traditional homelands of the Chinahultani, the Lower Tanana Dene, and I'm so grateful for their continued stewardship, you know, for the past 10,000 years to the present, so we could live on these beautiful lands. I have a background in social work, and for my dissertation, I looked at the relationship between governance and well-being, especially as it pertained to the management of natural resources, or I'd like to say the stewardship of our fish, water, and land relatives. I currently teach in the Department of Alaska Native Studies and Rural Development and also tribal governance. And just really grateful for this work that we're doing collectively to shed light on the thousands of years of stewardship and knowledge that exists in this place, Alaska, and bringing that to its rightful place in academia alongside Western education. We have a couple of projects, including this one, Tamamta, and also Indigenizing Salmon Management in Alaska project, and navigating the new Arctic project. So there's a lot of work that we're collectively doing to bring to light some of these inequities and also to honor the immense knowledge that Indigenous people of Alaska have around many topics. And so we're super excited. It's really a joy in my life to be doing this work. I feel like my grandparents would be very proud of me and prepared me to do this work. So just really excited. We want to get to know all of you and give some information. So I'll pass off the mic to Dr. Stern, Charlene Stern, our Vice Chancellor of Rural Community and Native Education, who is also a PI on this project. Dr. Stern.
Drn Gwynzi, everyone. Shojri Charlene Stern, Vashai Ko Gwetslan Itli. So my name is Charlene Stern. I'm originally from the community of Arctic Village, Alaska, which we refer to in the Gwich'in language as Vashai Ko, and it really refers to our place in the world being on the creek along a steep bank is how we say where we come from. And I'm really happy to be here as part of this team. I currently serve as the Vice Chancellor for our college, which includes our rural campuses out in rural Alaska, as well as our community technical college here that's based in Fairbanks. So I'm very passionate about this work. I grew up on a tributary of the Yukon, so we didn't do a lot of salmon fishing, but we are caribou people. I've been very engaged in the porcupine caribou fight to protect it and also the management. I sit on the International Porcupine Caribou Management Board. And I also serve as the Vice President for Canada Chiefs Conference, which is a tribal consortium of 37 federally recognized tribes in the interior. So protecting our subsistence ways of life, whether it's fish, caribou, moose, birds, all of it is central to who I am. It's an extremely important part of our work. And so I'm really excited to be part of this process and excited finally to be seeing some of your faces as people who are interested in engaging in this project. So Masik Cho.
Yeah, I'd turn it over to Dr. Peter Wesley.
Hi all. Yeah, my name is Peter Wesley, and that's the pandemic puppy that is barking in the background. So I apologize, it's always on cue, isn't it, these days? I grew up in Anchorage. My parents moved to Alaska in the 70s. So I'm a lifelong Alaskan. Currently live in Fairbanks and work on the Trothieta campus, the Lower Tanana people. And my training is as an evolutionary ecologist. So the questions that really excite me and fascinate me are questions that are at sort of the interface of the ecological, so how animals and plants and the ecosystems interact, but also understanding how things change through deeper time, through evolution, and understanding how ecology and evolution are aspects of things we need to understand when thinking about the changing world that we live in, things like climate change and biological invasions and other challenges. So I've been trained formally in the Western world to think about sustainability and fisheries in a very sort of specific sort of way, where sustainability often is let's say limited to, but it has a very hyper focus on the abundance of fish, how many fish can be caught sustainably, and increasingly through the work with Courtney and Jessica and others, it's clear to me that there's more that we ought to be sustaining, that particularly in Alaska, what we want to be sustaining and striving to sustain is the connection and relationship of people to place and their connections to ways of life, that the abundance of fish is a necessary but not sufficient aspect of what we ought to be thinking about. And that's been an eye-opening experience for me. It's been slow, it's been a journey, but it's fun working with people that, as we heard recently in a big speech earlier this week, working with people where their whole soul is in this work. And I really appreciate that, working with a group like that. So I'm excited to meet you all, learn more about you all, and hope to be working with at least a large number of you in the future. So yes, segue. Who shall I segue to?
Thanks so much, Peter. Yeah, I was checking if Seth, Dr. Seth Danielson is another one of our senior personnel PIs. I don't know if Seth is on. Seth, are you out there somewhere?
He was absent yesterday. My gut feeling is he is on a big boat somewhere or doing something. Yeah.
Right on. And anyone else on our lead team that we're missing? I don't think I saw anyone. I did want to acknowledge Jesse Coleman, a recent PhD graduate from our department, did the creative work on our website. So I just saw your name, Jesse. Thank you so much for your amazing creative graphics. And that's a good segue, Dr. Black. I think we'll pull up the slides. So yeah, our plan was to run through just a few slides to give you a little more meat than what you might have found on the website, but leave plenty of space for questions. And so as we are talking, if questions come to mind, feel free to put them in the chat, but we will have space too to have a sort of back and forth. So
I want to recognize Trent. Trent, you're on, aren't you? Did you want to say a few words?
Sure. I hadn't planned on it, but
you could just
thank
introduce
you for the
yourself.
opportunity. Yeah. So my name is Trent Sutton. I'm a faculty member in Fisheries and the Association of Academic Programs in the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences on the Trotheta campus, home of the Tanana peoples. I'm actually originally from Michigan. I actually looked it up thanks to Courtney's map, which is where I grew up is the home of the Potawatomi people. So that was actually informative for me to look at that. But my role here, I was one of the core faculty members that played a bit of a role in helping to develop the proposal. And my background is in fisheries. I teach a fisheries management class and a couple of other classes in our program. So I'm excited about this program. As an associate dean, it's great to see opportunities to grow our programs, our academic programs, to have these collaborations across our campus. And I'm excited to see how this opportunity grows and develops, and I think revolutionizes and changes how we think about fisheries within Alaska. So thank you for the opportunity to be involved in this.
Thank you, Trent. And then I'd also like to recognize Danielle Ringer, who helps us with so many of our projects. And Danielle, did you want to do a brief introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jessica. Chimai, hello, everyone. I am Danielle Ringer. I am a research associate with UAF, but I am based down south here at the Kodiak Seafood and Marine Science Center. I was born and raised over on the mainland in Homer, but I've lived and worked on the ancestral homelands of the Alutiiq Sugpiaq people on Kodiak Island for about the past 11 years. And my husband and I also have a small-scale fishing operation here in the community. My graduate student career was also through UAF. I received my master's degree in studying the political ecology of fisheries and have been really honored to work with a lot of the folks on the Tamamta Program faculty team in some of the projects that actually have led to the birth of this program. So recently, like Jessica said, I've been helping out with sort of the launch and logistics here. And I would love you to use me as a resource. I'm here for any questions or assistance that I can help you with. I'm really excited. I think this program is so innovative and timely, and hopefully can be sort of an idea to spring forward a lot of other programs like this across the country. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need assistance. If you're kind of going through the application process or just have questions in general, you can contact me. I'll shoot my email in the chat here. But thanks so much for spending part of your lunchtime with us, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Danielle. And sorry for missing a couple of you. I'm sorry, I was trying to get my presenter mode figured out. I think I've got at least a little bit of that figured out. Danielle, I failed to figure out the full screen, but that's okay. Does it look okay?
Looks
Good
great.
enough. Okay, awesome. So yeah, pass it off to you again, Jess, to kick us off. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone. And once again, just thank you so much for coming and learning and listening. And we're gonna make sure we leave some time for questions. So we're gonna go through some slides briefly, and then we'll leave some time for discussion and questions. So Tamamta is really about transforming Western and Indigenous fisheries and marine sciences together. So just briefly, you know, growing up, my whole life, I was always learning as a Native person. I didn't come to school or even my university education with as a blank slate. I had a lot of knowledge that I was really grounded in my culture and my way of life through the teachings of my grandparents and then just our great big extended family. So that was a really important foundation of like who I am and how I got through school is tapping into that knowledge culture foundation. But that wasn't necessarily represented when I came to school. I learned a lot of very useful information, but didn't really see my culture reflected when I was going to college, which was like 20 years ago. So I think Tamamta is really about bringing in Indigenous knowledge to its rightful place alongside Western education and using the best of science to move us forward for the well-being of not only people, but our animal, plant, fish relatives, and our whole entire ecosystem together. You can hit the next slide. I don't know if I have the power to do that. So we introduced ourselves, but I'd also like to recognize some of our other team members that are on the Tamamta slide. Ginny Eckhart, Kaz Aruskovich, who is our evaluator, Brenda Konar, Dr. Seth Danielson, and Arlie Reynolds, who we really, when we wrote this proposal, we're really focused on how many partnerships could we build so that when our students came into the program, they could come into this large web of support. So whether it was, you know, they were very interested in more of like the One Health perspective in fisheries or rural development and fisheries, like they could find their place within this program. And faculty to help mentor them through their graduate education. You can hit the next slide. So we have some pretty large goals as part of Tamamta, which are to provide, well, first of all, transform graduate education in fisheries and marine sciences so that our Indigenous knowledge is brought into this place so that not only our students can help share what they've learned, right, their whole life experience of being on the land, being in close relationship with the environment, and our animal, plant, water relatives, but also to learn and take the best of both Western science and Indigenous knowledge together to tackle some of our most pressing challenges. I think it's goes without saying that we are at a time in the world that there are a lot of challenges before us, not just within the political environment, right, but in the land-based environment. And our ability to engage in that relationship, I think about climate change, for example. It doesn't just impact the land, right? It impacts the ability of people to get out on the land and practice their traditional way of life, hunting, fishing, gathering. We also provide support through our program for the next generation of Indigenous and allied scientists and managers. So a lot of students who graduate with their fisheries degree do go into management, or I like to say stewardship. And so we want to have students with a holistic background in both Indigenous fisheries and Western science, and then engage in decolonizing and indigenizing approaches widely across UAF and through our partnerships. So things like elders coming in and giving talks, time out on the land through our cohort-based models, like talks, visiting Indigenous scholars to talk about some of the work they've done to transform education or transform systems. So those are some of our big project goals. Next slide. So, you know, I think I sort of alluded to it, but I'll just say that as Indigenous people, we have 14,000 plus years of stewardship and care for this land. And that is ongoing relationship. So, you know, my grandparents, I mentioned them, they learned from their grandparents and their grandparents, and all of that collective knowledge is passed down and shared with me. And so that collective deep time knowledge is really important for stewardship and can really help to solve our most pressing concerns. And yet we know that it's not really brought into its full extent. So we have ongoing erasure, exclusion, and deep inequities. I know just as an Indigenous scholar, like sometimes when I say the word Indigenous or inequities or racism, it's like I'm met with a hand because people don't really want to talk about that. But part of Tamamta is bringing to light some of these inequities and really shifting education to be more inclusive and honor this deep time, the research and governance systems that center Indigenous knowledge and sovereignty. So there's been tons of research out there that really highlights this. The work of Dr. Eve Tuck, McKenzie, and McCoy, as well as Libby Roderick and Larry Merkulieth. And so there's some really powerful quotes. I might just read them briefly because I think they really strike at the heart of what we're trying to do here. So ongoing colonization of land and peoples are in fact embedded within educators and researchers' practices and understandings of environmental education around the globe. And that's from Dr. Eve Tuck, McKenzie, and McCoy. And then we are part of a higher education system in Alaska and beyond that has for centuries marginalized Native cultures and peoples. So we really hope to shift that. And also it can just add to the depth of knowledge that exists. So it's like a win, right? That's the way we see it, is really bringing in the best knowledge systems there is to make fisheries and all of the marine sciences better, more holistic, more comprehensive. Okay, I think I'm turning it over to you, Dr. Carruthers.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jessica, Dr. Black. Yeah, so we, with that, the sort of motivation from this work, like Jessica said, is really to get at the core of some of these deep inequities and bring about some pretty big transformation. And so growing out this program was really exciting because we wanted to really center Indigenous pedagogies, Indigenous ways of learning and of knowing and of being in relationship with community and with the land and with the animals. So we are hoping to spend maybe post-pandemic a lot of time together in place in community, as we're invited potentially to fish camps, to Indigenous communities to be embraced in their communities and cultures for our retreats. We're developing some new classes that we're really excited about, some team taught Western fishery science alongside Indigenous fisheries science, and how does it look to bridge two different ways of knowing, two different assessments of quality, of health, of wellness for the fish and people who are connected to them, and really across all the cultures of Alaska. It's so exciting to think about a holistic Indigenous Fisheries of Alaska class that we're putting together. We're going to be hosting this fall as well. Peter and I will be hosting a fisheries governance seminar, trying to dive deep into some of these big questions that maybe are hard to work across from our disciplinary and our cultural perspectives, but thinking about what does it look like to debate and think and move forward on some of these topics. And we're so excited to have students with us, the sort of new thinkers, the younger creative folks to help us think how to do this. We've been really blessed in our other projects to work with Indigenous elders who have guided our intellectual work and our thoughts on this. And so we have an Elders in Residence program where we'll hopefully be hosting a couple of elders per semester or per year in Fairbanks. We also have a campus in Juneau as well, and some of us are spread throughout. So we'll have a lot of geographic flexibility too for students when you're deciding if you want to be part of our program and where you might be based in Alaska. We're excited to welcome leading visiting Indigenous scholars from across the globe and really exciting partnerships that many of our team already have. We have a slide at the end with some of our partners, and we have an optional internship program for students that want to pursue working with one of our partner organizations at a tribal organization, at a state or federal organization. We are hoping to really take this outside of the university as well, and developing some short courses for our partners at the state and federal agencies that we work with, training, racial equity training, cultural competency training, ways that Western trained scientists might augment their work by engaging more deeply in Indigenous knowledge systems. We've been in some of our projects working with First Alaskans Institute to lead dialogues on some of these hard topics that, like Jessica said, it's uncomfortable for all of us to talk about these things, but we need to talk about them, and we need to lean into that discomfort that we have on these topics to get real and to move past some of these barriers. And again, I mentioned Abayuk Moore is working on some of our artistic materials, and we're hoping to get a larger source of funding for really representing in our buildings at UAF campus. There's a larger conversation about making sure that the Indigenous peoples of the lands are represented well, first and foremost, in our signage, in our art, and we'd like to heavily do that in our fisheries and marine sciences buildings as well across the state. So we are, for students that are interested in this program, some of you may be current students and you already have a research project. Some of you may be brand new and haven't thought too much yet about what a research project could look like at either a master's or PhD level. We have a lot of research partnerships already ongoing. And so it may be that you're able to work, your interests might align well with our indigenizing salmon management project, for example, and you could come on board in that project and then do your degree through Tamamta. Peter Wesley's lab here on some of his salmon ecology work has many different projects going on that may appeal to students. Dr. Danielson works in our oceanography folks, and Dr. Konar in marine biology have many projects that may suit students that have interest in this project. And we are partnering with the Center for One Health Research and the BLAST program to partner across sort of undergraduate and graduate opportunities. So we're really excited for that, and the Alaska EPSCoR program as well. And the State of Alaska Salmon and People Project is a project that's sort of over, but we have an incredible trove of data that was collected for that project. And there's a lot of opportunity for students to use data that's already been collected to do new work for their master's and other graduate degrees. So I wanted to make clear that we are asking for applications for fellowships. We have a nice grant from NSF that is funding graduate students at the heart of our program. So we're seeking prospective students and also current graduate students who may need fellowship support. And so we have a program that awards trainees a stipend, health insurance, it pays for tuition and fees. We would cover all of your expenses for traveling to be part of our land-based and community-based camps and immersions. Depending on need, we have between 1 and 3 years of support for students. There is a limitation for these fellowships. You have to be a US citizen. You also are not able to work full-time or even really part-time. There's some exceptions that can be made, but generally NSF does not want you to have another position. But we really encourage students who already have funding to apply to our program as well to be fellows, even though you wouldn't be receiving the same funding package. If you're committed to this work, if it excites you and you want to be part of it, we welcome everyone to apply, students, current students or prospective students to apply. We also are able to potentially offer like tuition credit, different kinds of support. Maybe if you do have another research assistantship or you have a job that you don't want to leave, but you could work on your graduate degree alongside of your job, please reach out to us if you have any questions of like, does this program fit my situation? We did get some questions about if this is based just at UAF. We are for the fellowships and hoping to support students at UAF or those that would want to apply to UAF. But students in other universities, particularly those who may not need funding, but who want to be part of our project, we encourage you to apply. We're doing so much Zoom-based work right now, and I think we always will. So there's a lot of parts of our project you could contribute to and participate in, even without, being present in Alaska, and potentially would be invited to come to retreats and things if you're able to secure some of your own funding for that. So we are asking folks to apply by February 15th. We do have 4 cohorts expected. So there'll be another application period next year and next year and next year, at least 4, potentially 5. So if you aren't quite, maybe you haven't finished your undergraduate work yet, or you're not quite sure if this program suits, check us out again next year if you'd like, or apply this year and we could discuss that with you. For new students, we thought it might be confusing about when to apply to what. So we were asking you to apply to the Tamamta program first, and we'll let you know by March 15th if you've been awarded a fellowship. And then if you have been awarded a fellowship, we can visit with you about how best to apply to UAF, what department, what advisor might be appropriate, or co-advisors. So you don't have to apply to UAF yet, and please don't, or it doesn't matter if you have, that's fine, but you don't need to do that until after we make these decisions. And yes, so I just want to feature some of Jesse's great graphics and colors, and so we have this, please join us. And the application there is I believe I have a slide that you can do that online. There's some open-ended questions, and we're asking not for letters of reference, just contact information. And unofficial transcripts is fine. We're sort of just looking at the general package here, and then you can also email them if you would like to fill them out in another way. These are slides that we'll post to our website if you want to look in more depth on these. We have a couple of sample pathways for students to understand what a course of study might look like. A master's program in fisheries tends to be 2 to 3 years. We've put an ambitious program of 2 years on this. This is everything that would be required for Tamamta students, and then how it aligns with our fisheries graduate requirements. And so this is an example of the kinds of classes that you would take if you decided to do an MS degree, Masters of Science in Fisheries. And so, like I said, I'll put these up so you guys can have a closer look, or we can pull them up if there's any questions. Similarly, there's a program, MS in Marine Biology, that students could complete in 2.5 to potentially 3 years, depending on your research, as well as oceanography. And we are also expecting some of our students may want to do degrees in rural development or Indigenous studies, and there's opportunities and I think pathways to do that, and we can certainly visit with anyone who might be interested in those degrees as well, and want those students part of this program as well. So I want to mention our funders. NSF is funding this through the NRT, the Interdisciplinary Graduate Traineeship Program, and also through their Navigating the New Arctic program. They're kind of co-sponsoring this award. And we've been working with a number of partner organizations in some of our other work that I think really helped the development of this project. And we owe gratitude to our partners at throughout the state and across tribal and state and federal bodies. And I think that is the end of our formal program. So we can open, or maybe I can give a little minute for Danielle or Peter or Charlene or anyone to add, Trent, if I've missed anything, and if not, we can open up to questions. Hearing no additions, I wonder if, oh, go ahead, Peter.
Well, I was just going to say that hopefully you're also give us a bit of patience and so forth. This is our first rolling out, and there's going to be some learning for us along the way for sure. And but we're just really excited to hear the questions that arise, and so hopefully someone can start it off. But
Courtney, this is Brendan.
Hey, Brendan.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying this looks like a fabulous effort, and I think it really does have the potential to transform higher education in Alaska, and kudos to all of you. I have a question about, Courtney, you worked with us on the search program, the study of environmental Arctic change, and we're quite certain we're going to be refunded, but we've really revamped our focus to really focus on co-production of knowledge and making it available to decision makers at every level of decision making, from tribal governments to the federal government and beyond. And so we have, as our co-PIs, we have the Eskimo Walrus Commission, Alaska Native Tribal Health, and they're going to really help us bring in Indigenous experts into producing these sort of whole system understandings. So I think there's a lot of synergism there. One of the things, so my question has to do with, do you imagine that Tamamta would be able to help efforts like searches that are parallel? For example, we'll be recruiting for a postdoc in the next year or so to work on this co-production. We would love to find an Indigenous postdoc, or certainly somebody who has a good background in co-production and can help us push that. So is that something you guys would see yourselves contributing to, sort of recruiting for efforts like that?
Yeah. Thanks so much for the question, Brendan. And yeah, really good to see you. Yeah, absolutely. I think that already the graduate students at UAF are already kind of ahead of us. I'm thinking of Margaret Rudolph, as well. Janessa Esquible is a PhD student in fisheries, and kind of did this, amazing sort of look at what is all the literature around co-production, bridging Western and Indigenous science in a good way, having that effort more be Indigenous led, centering, sovereignty, self-determination, those sorts of things. So I think the students that are hopefully coming out of programs where this is a focus will hopefully be some of the folks you would recruit there in the future. But also this, the sort of responding to need around developing some courses and pedagogy, best practices. I hear that a lot in my work from natural scientists of like, what should I be doing? How do I work with communities in a good way? And it's hard to just impart that in a conversation. And so developing some guidance, best practices, coursework. I don't know, Jess or others, if you wanted to chime in on that question.
No, I think you answered it well, and I think it's definitely something we can think about a little bit more in depth. And I'm writing down questions as they pop up.
Speaking of questions, we do have one in the chat, Courtney. It is directed towards you. I think it is a clarification of what we mean by well-being, and whether that's going to be coming out on paper sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks, Adelheid. So we did, one of our working groups for the State of Alaska Salmon and People Project was focused on well-being. Dr. Rachel Donkersloot led that effort, and several elders really guided, Wilson Justin and Otna elder, Mike Williams, Yupik elder, Freddie Christensen from the Kodiak region. So we had developed collaboratively across Indigenous and Western approaches a collective definition of well-being that we did publish. I can put that link in the chat in a second in an academic paper. It's open access, so anyone's welcome to look at that. But one of the major kind of shifts in how the concept of well-being is defined in the general literature versus our definition centered that self-determination, that peoples, sovereign peoples should have the right to determine how they want to live and in what wellness looks like. So it's not necessarily, the income indicator that, the GDP or whatever these indicators of wellness are. So I'll post that in just a second if maybe. And then I did see another question too about K-12. So yes, I think this program through NSF is focused on graduate students. So the bulk of our support is meant to go toward graduate education. But I think we're hearing, especially with centering Indigenous ways as front in our work, that mentorship and relationships are the heart of everything that we're doing. And so again, I'll mention Janessa Esquible, who's the natural resources director for the ONC Bethel tribe, has taught me a ton about the importance of mentoring youth from high school level through then to undergraduate and then to graduate. So we're seeing this as a very long-term project. And so yes, if there are interested high school students, we have a lot of work at UAF to do the bridging between high school and college. I could see us developing maybe a 100 level class that might interest students around indigenous fisheries of Alaska. And so thinking about how to do that and partnering as well with Sonia Ibarra is another PhD student, indigenous PhD student in Juneau, and has done a lot of work in the Juneau region around mentoring youth, K-12 and undergraduate youth as well. So I'm hopeful that we can build more into our program on that. Thanks for the question.
Something to add to this, if I could, just for a second, thinking about the bridging aspect and undergraduate specifically. So one of the other hats I wear, I'm the director of URSA, which is the Office of Undergraduate Research and Scholarly Activity here at UAF on the Trothieta campus. And there's a chance to support undergraduate students as well through some of these activities. And I think that might be an opportunity to engage with our group and this effort as well. So I would just throw that out there. We haven't talked a lot about that yet, but I think we have a lot of time to kind of figure out how we might fit in to that, to this initiative.
Thanks, Trent. Yeah, and just seeing a couple more questions here. There was a question about the timeline. And so we have been thinking, I think it's Cameron, we have been thinking about cohorts being a pretty foundational part of our process, because we start like in a retreat space in the fall and kind of work through. So I do, I guess I haven't talked to the team about this, but in my mind, it's been that there'll be a fall start. So if you wanted to start in December, it may be then that you would join the cohort to, the next fall's cohort. So I think we're gonna probably keep it to that cohort-based fall start program, but that's not set in stone. So please reach out if you have a good rationale for starting in a different way. And then another question I'm reading about expanding into other departments, and particularly wildlife and forestry. I will say that in addition to wanting to build a really strong, inclusive realm with students, we want to also do that in departmental levels. So we're welcoming some partnerships. There's some interesting proposal development and other initiatives along similar lines. And we're welcoming partnership with all of those to the extent that we can bring Tamamta into other departments. We welcome that at UAF and also really across the nation. There's a group in Maine that's trying to do something very similar to what we're doing, and they'd like to do exchanges and different kinds of things. So I think this momentum is building out, and the centering of this, Tamamta, all of us, the sense of like it takes all of us to be doing this transformational work, and the more partners and the more nodes we might be able to have in different departments and different institutions, the better.
Yeah, for example, Alexis, you had asked that question about wildlife management and forestry. We have this Indigenous Fisheries class, which will be one of our required classes, but maybe if you were, say, in a different program, that would be, you'd have to take that class, but you'd have to sort of look at what your program requires, what we require, and sort of blend it. So I want to build upon what Courtney was saying, that we'll make it work.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How would it work for students that might be joining, say, in their second year of their program, with starting with the cohort, I guess?
That's a good question. I think that we would think about it in terms of like Tamamta cohort. So if you were to start, for example, next year in your second year as a graduate student, it would still be your first year of Tamamta. So you would be, sort of in that first cohort. And I expect that we would, for the first maybe several years, have some students like that where they might be in their second year. We might have PhD students that are in their fifth year and they want to join for a year before they finish. And I think that model is really good in the sense of you'll have a lot more experience for some of the questions that incoming students might have. So maybe you would be a nice mentor for the cohort 1 incoming students. So I think it's good to have that structure of experience. Yeah, in terms of the classes, we are, in terms of there's 3 main classes that Tamamta students will all take together, and we're assuming that would kind of start in the first fall and spring. The Indigenous Fisheries of Alaska, the Fisheries Governance Seminar, it's a 2-credit class, and then a professional skills class that we may link up with marine biology and oceanography and fisheries on. So that's something too, where depending on your program, if that would fit in or not, depending on other requirements that you have. But we would be very flexible with UMIC for sure in terms of how to structure that.
Okay, thank you.
There's a nice question from Carly from the chat, just asking about cohort size. What are we thinking about the cohort size and the mix of MS and PhD students? Is a great question.
Yeah, hi Carly, nice to see you. Yeah, I think well, I know it's going to be super hard to make decisions, so I'm hopeful that we'll at least be able to fund 5 or 6 students the first year. We had sort of budgeted for 4 to 6 students a year for 4 to 5 years cohorts. And so it also depends on how much funding students need. If some students are only requesting tuition support, then maybe we can fund, 7 or, depending on budgeting, but we're hoping to have at least 5. I would say that we are expecting to probably have more master's students than PhDs, but I'm not sure on that. We have gotten a lot of interest already, and I'd say it's probably 75% have been at the master's level and 25% at the PhD level.
And just wanted to welcome Seth. He just joined us. He's one of our faculty members for the new program. And I know, Seth, you had something going on earlier, so thanks for logging on.
Yeah, sorry to be late. I just got out of class I was teaching and I'm just able to hop over. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Seth. Yes, Seth is one of our co-PIs on the project. And I see Natasha has a question. Can't hear you, Natasha.
Sorry, thank you. Is that better? Chimay, I was just wondering if you've got more applicants than you've got funding for the first cohort. If you've got applicants who have got alternative funding, are you still accepting them into the cohort if they're not needing the financial support?
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. That's definitely, and we wanted to make sure that was clear. Yes, we are encouraging folks to apply even if they don't need funding. And so we will be calling and referring to everyone that's accepted into the program as a Tamamta Fellow. And that's, I guess, by doing that too, you're also kind of committing to be like part of this initiative and work. And depending on your degree program, if those classes that all the fellows are taking fit, with your program, then you could take those as well. If you're, I guess, not receiving funding, I don't know that we would require the same level of commitment as those students who are receiving funding, but encouraging everyone that wants to be part of this program to apply.
So a follow-up question is, if you were accepted into the program and not being funded, would you still be eligible to participate in the retreats and the fish camps and those kinds of things that are part of the curriculum?
Yes, and so this is where we may have to kind of look back to our budget. I'm confident that we might be able to get some supplemental funds from our partners and other entities. But generally, the way we've budgeted is for the students who are receiving a fellowship, we have travel funds for those students to do all of the retreats, and we would need to fundraise or have personal or project contributions for other students. But I think, yeah, I'm sort of thinking that we could support like the retreat and cultural immersion piece for everyone with a little bit of fundraising. But
yeah, the other thing I wanted to just say is, because this, 1 second, please. Because it requires you not to work, but maybe you have a job and you just still need tuition support, then we have other projects that we might be able to support your tuition, but not like give you a stipend, if that makes sense. So like the Indigenizing Salmon Management Project, we have a certain level of funding we can support tuition. But so we encourage everyone to apply, and we want to review the proposals, and then we can do some thoughts into like how we can help students and what aspects. But like the actual living, or the 34,000, you can't work and receive that. So
That's very helpful. Thank you.
yeah, and just to add and amplify, I think you said it just as well, Jess, but that we really want to meet students where they're at. So in the application, tell us your ideal situation. Like this is, I would hope to continue doing this, but if I can, I would do that. Just we'd like to be able to meet students where they're at and what works best. To support, some of you are engaged in a lot of work that's so connected to this. And so it would be, you would want to leave that work to do a graduate program so you could, maybe do them both. And so we just want to be able to be flexible with the students that are committed to wanting to do this work, and how can we support what you're doing in the situation that you're in, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're really excited. I think the big thing is just, meeting that deadline to apply and doing your best. And if you have specific questions, reaching out. We've already had some students reach out and just ask some questions. So don't be shy. This is brand new, but we're super excited, and we want to do our best to like answer your questions. And also we wanted this to be, have this webinar so you could better understand our thinking behind this grant, because we are very intentional about what we're trying to do with our project goals. And so, we're excited about it, and we want students to be a critical part of this, and we want you to feel good as you apply, and just take some time to apply and give those questions some of your best thinking, but know that you all have heart, you're here. We're excited about that, and we're really looking forward to reviewing the applications.
Any other thoughts or questions? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Guyana Sanak, Masi Cho, Guyana Pak.
Thank you.
Medasi. Isaac, did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Awesome. Jess, do we want to close out and go around, or just how should we end here?
Yeah, we could just say that in a good way. We just want to say Masit Cho and thank you, and we look forward to your applications, but also the continued partnerships across the university and organizations. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And we'll post this recording if you know of anyone that wanted to join and couldn't. We'll post the recording on the website.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This sounds like a great program.
Thank you, Elena.